So since my most popular video is about the Russian Revolution, I thought I'd talk a little about what happened after the Russian Revolution. By the way, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you can just click here, and it should redirect you to my old Russian Revolution video. So as you can probably imagine, Lenin's transition wasn't completely accepted at once. He met a lot of opposition from the Russian aristocracy known as the kulaks. You see, the kulaks had a lot of their rights restricted and, well, they couldn't really run business the way they wanted to anymore. So after quite some time of just standing there yelling at Lenin, they decided it's time to hit back. We often call the kulaks and the aristocracy of Russia the white. The whites were essentially liberalists. They wanted free markets, they wanted tax reduction, they wanted reinstitution of democracy, because Lenin had turned Russia into a one-party state, and they were not really quiet about this. In 1918, after Lenin had been in power for 1 year, he was already facing some pretty massive opposition. The whites were striking and they were protesting in Petrograd, and that is St. Petersburg. There was still not a whole lot of love for the Germans, so they had changed the name. Initially, this was not a problem for Lenin, and although people like Kerensky had tried to stage a coup with military might, no one could really stand up to the Red Army. The thing is, that didn't really make them back down. They were not really centralized, and an uncentralized opposition is hard to break. So the Russian Civil War went on for about 4 years until 1922. Even though it was not initially a problem for Lenin, the Civil War grew to become really huge pain to him. This is mostly because of the lack of resources. Now, Russia was already pretty poor, but they had some good self-sufficiency. The self-sufficiency took a really huge hit when a drought hit Russia. This means that the Red Army that was fighting off Lenin's opposition started starving, and because of the lack of resources, the farmers didn't really have any incentive to sell their food because there was nothing to trade for. The farmers started to keep the food to themselves and just pay the bare minimum of taxes. When Lenin realized this, he initiated what is called war communism. War communism is an economic policy in which all materials are taken by force if they have to. So this means that soldiers and workers were instructed to search farms at any cost for any food that they can find and redistribute this back into society. Now, of course, this caused really bad times for the farmers. So guess what? A new enemy arises. The farmers. The farming movement against Lenin is often referred to as the Greens. So in this conflict, you have the Greens, who are the farmers, the Reds, who are the communists, and the Whites, who are the rich kulaks. But you also have a whole lot of old revolutionaries, especially those called the Kronstadt sailors. Now, the only thing you really have to know about the Kronstadt sailors is that they are a military division that helped Lenin during the revolution. In the Communist Manifesto, farmers would fall under what is called the proletariat. The proletariat are the ones that the communists are supposed to protect. And the Kronstadt sailors are very firm believers in communism. So when Lenin starts taking food directly forcefully from the farmers, the Kronstadt sailors object because they feel that this is totally against the spirit of communism. So the Kronstadt sailors join the massive riots and uprisings that are happening in Petrograd at that moment. And they promise to protect them from any military repercussions caused by their actions. Trotsky was the commander of the Red Army at the time, and Trotsky did not like this from the Kronstadt sailors, so Trotsky started opening fire. He ordered to have every single Kronstadt sailor killed. He also showed that he is not at all afraid to open fire at a public civilian crowd if he has to. And he does, in the end, win over the Kronstadt sailors. They don't prove very effective against the Red Army. In fact, no one really does. So through a very long process of many events, the Red Army stands victorious, but they had to make a compromise. Lenin, being the man he is, knows that even if he's won the civil war, a displeased community will not let him stay in power for long. So he initiated what is just known as the New Economic Policy. Just made it that simple. That's the name. New Economic Policy. Where they kind of they tear everything from war communism down, and actually most things of economic communism just gone there. And they reinstate partial capitalism. This is not directly popular either, because now people start feeling a little bit cheated by Lenin, because all of a sudden he's reinstating capitalist ideas. This was of course to stimulate growth amongst the farmers and to get them back on his side. So what he did was even though in even though the communist idea of taking a large chunk of the production and redistributing amongst the society is still there, he lets the farmers and the producers be free to sell their surplus at free markets. He also lowers taxes a little bit, and he allows for free enterprise. So this compromise calms down the Russian people, and they start to see an end of the Civil War. Not long after the Civil War is over, Trotsky gets killed and Lenin dies of a stroke. Now, Stalin was actually not supposed to be the successor at all of Lenin. Lenin actually despised the guy. But Stalin managed to sneak his way to power anyway. Just a little fun fact to throw in there.